Sales are easy. It's making the call that's hard. Hi, my name is Dave Gallegos. I've spent the last 25 years in the mortgage industry and a lifetime in sales. In this show, I'll bring that experience, expertise, and the experts I've met to you with actionable advice to improve your sales. It's not magic. You just make the call. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Dave Gallegos, and this is another episode of Make the Call. This is a podcast that's designed to help salespeople, mostly in the mortgage space, but also in real estate and really any other sales industry that you find yourself operating in. It's designed to help folks create a better experience for themselves as salespeople. I believe that sales is probably the toughest job that someone can have. I like to say that salespeople are the elite athletes of any organization. When you think about what it is that salespeople are tasked with doing, their job is to go out and find clients that want to buy the products that the organization sells. And without that happening, without sales, the organization dies. So that's one of the reasons that I really am passionate about helping people with that and talking to folks that are in the sales businesses to help them achieve the highest levels of success. I think the reason people get into sales is because I wanted no lid on my income. I didn't want someone to tell me how much I was going to make. And so I have a passion for helping people do that and helping people become everything they're capable of becoming. Anyway, today, what we're going to talk about, I'm recording this it's actually middle of November. This is probably going to be released towards the end of November or very beginning of December, which is typically the time of year that everybody's getting into some business planning. If you're not getting into business planning, now is the time for sure. So if you're listening to this, it's the beginning of December and you haven't started doing any business planning for 2025, that's a big mistake. And it's really in the mortgage space, what we talk about is we typically look at what typically happens is mortgage people they'll figure out what I've done my whole career. What I've seen people do is they figure out what their average income is on a per loan basis, how much they make on average per loan. And then they divide what their gross income goal is for the year by that number. So if you want to make $200,000 and you're making $4,000 a loan, 4,000, you want to make 200, you need to close 50 transactions in a year. So once you have established that you need to close 50 loans to achieve the income goal that you're looking for, then you just need to decipher what your average lead to closing ratio is. So if you need to close 50 loans and you close 1 out of 10 leads that you get, then you're going to need 500 leads. That's a lot of leads to close 50 loans, 10%, right? 1 out of 10, 10%. But typically in the mortgage space, a safe number of lead to closing ratio, a good number, solid number is 25% of the leads. In this case, if you want to close 50 loans, 25% of 50 loans, if you multiply 50 times 0.25, you're going to come up with 200 leads. 200 leads to close 50 loans, 200 leads for the whole year. It's about 16 leads, 16.7, 17 leads a month. And now you've got your work cut out for you. So that's the business planning side of it. And the question becomes, how are you going to get it? You look at your current lead flow. Where are your leads coming from? And, we're going to get into the weeds here if I'm not careful, but this is where having a CRM is probably one of the most critical things in your business. If you're not running your business around using a CRM, then you're not working smart. I don't want to say you're working dumb, but you're kind of being dumb about your career in that you're not focused on being as organized as you can possibly be. Again, an elite athlete knows everything about his results that he's getting, right? He knows everything about his training, his diet, his exercise, his sleep. He knows what he's supposed to do. He knows the plays. He knows everything. He studies. If you're an elite athlete, that's what you do. And if you're an elite athlete of a company, then that's what you need to do to achieve the results you're looking for. What's always interesting is that I've seen loan officers over the years, because we've been doing this, this is my 27th year in the mortgage business. And so probably the first 4 or 5 years, I didn't do any business planning. I was being dumb. But once I got into it, I realized the magic of putting plans on paper and figuring out what it is you wanted to accomplish. At least then you knew what you were shooting for, right? I think far too many salespeople probably make the mistake of waking up on January 2nd or 3rd. Usually it's not the 1st because it's a holiday, waking up on January 2nd or 3rd and going, all right, well, it's a new year. What am I going to be doing? And man, you're late. You're really late to the party, because your competition, if they're good, they started doing business planning in November, and then they worked on it and they gave themselves time. They time blocked for it, and they're ready to go on January 2nd. When they come to work that first day, they've already got a plan in place and they're ready to go. And that's what you need if you want to achieve the highest levels of success. And that's what this podcast is for, is people that want to achieve, that are willing to make the call for the highest level of success. Far too often, though, I think the focus can be on just that, the numbers and what they want to do. One of the things that I think is really powerful is identifying the kind of behaviors that you need to have in order to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. We can still use those same numbers, right? So if you want to close 100 loans a year and you're still closing 25%, well, now you need 400 leads. Now, 400 leads is like 33.3 leads a month over 12 months. That's a pretty good chunk of leads, right? That's about 7-8 leads a week that you're going to need, every 7-8-9 leads a week, right? Somewhere in that range, depending on the weeks, is the number of leads that you need to generate on a weekly basis. That requires a lot of effort. That's a lot of work. It can be done for sure. Like closing 100 loans is not anything mythical. We have a couple, 3 loan officers that'll close that many this year. Closing 100 loans in a year is not a big accomplishment. It's definitely solid for sure. I mean, you're talking about, in our market, you're a $45-50 million producer. You're in the top 2%, top 1%, but there's people that can exceed that dramatically. So it's a good solid number. I think for a high achiever, you're at the top of your game. If you're closing 100 loans a year, if you're closing 50, it's solid, right? You're doing 25 based on your average loan amounts. You're doing somewhere between 22.5 and 25 million a year based on the average loans. It's a solid amount of production for sure. But you get into that 50 loan, you get into that 100 loan range, and now you're really talking. And your income potential in that range is phenomenal. But I don't think in business planning, I just don't think there's enough emphasis placed on our behaviors. And here's what's really interesting. And this is leading into what I wanted to talk about today. So this is kind of a long lead in, but when you think about a loan officer or somebody that's in your profession, whether you're a loan officer or you're a real estate agent, when you look at your production and you look at your results, and then you look at the results other people are getting. And I'm not saying that you should always compare yourself to what others. In fact, I think there's a lot of danger in comparing your results to somebody else's. I think that's a really negative approach to becoming all you're capable of becoming. What I think you should focus on is comparing yourself to the previous versions of yourself. So what did you do in 2024? That's who I want you to compete against for 2025. That should be your focus. Like, how are you going to beat 2025? And you don't beat what you did every year in this business. That's for sure. We've seen that the last few years. Am I right? 2019, 2020, 2021, a lot different than 22 and 23. Very few people, if any's business went up from 22 to 23. And so, if at all, I don't know that anybody actually accomplished that. I know some people said they did, but when you look at them, when you dig a little deeper, you see that really wasn't the case. What has always been interesting to me, you can have a loan officer who works 40, 50 hours a week, closing 50 loans a year. And you can have another loan officer working 40, 50 hours a week, closing 100 loans a year. So they're both working the same amount of hours, but one of them, and they could both be putting in the same amount of effort. Don't get me wrong. They could both be, or at least they think they're putting in the same amount of effort, right? And one loan officer's results are 50 loans a year. Another loan officer's results are 100 loans a year. So what's the difference? And it really comes down to how those hours are being used by those two people. And this ties into what I wanted to focus on. As you know, I'm a big fan of Darren Hardy, if you've listened to this podcast at all, and a big fan of his book, The Compound Effect. Had a big impact on me. I read this book the first time, I think it was 2000, and I have it in here, October of 2012. Between 2012 and 2016, I read it 15 times. Probably going to read it again this year, the first of the year. But before I do that, I get his Darren Daily podcast. So maybe I'll send him a link to this podcast so he can see, this whole podcast is going to be about Darren Hardy stuff. But I was listening to some of his Darren Dailies that he puts out every morning. And if you haven't signed up for Darren Daily, I'm getting no kickback on this, by the way. Sign up for his Darren Dailies. There's always some good content every morning. It's a great way to start your morning. He puts it out 5 days a week. It's completely free. Comes with a little bit of a commercial for his products every now and then, but for the most part, really solid. very great way to start your day. I will tell you that, I mean, obviously he's not doing it for his health, but it's always great content. And to me, Darren is right up there with the legends of personal development. I think I know one of his idols and his biggest mentors was the great Jim Rohn. I would say that you could easily put Darren Hardy in the same class as Jim Rohn, and probably Darren has gone far and away above that with the way he's leveraged and the way he shares his knowledge with the rest of the world. But one of my favorite Darren Hardy products, because I've spent, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars. I've brought him in here for a keynote speaker to real estate agents here in the Denver market once. I probably spent as much money with Darren Hardy products over the years, trainings, seminars, coaching platforms. I've been to two of his that he doesn't do them anymore live, but high performance forums. I did one of his initial high performance productivity seminars is how I first came to be in a one-on-one meeting with him. And then from there, I did 2 high performance forums, which were small groups, but now he calls it something else now. And it's not live, it's virtual, but it's very good. I'm told. I've not done it, but I'm a big fan of one of his products called Insane Productivity. And Insane Productivity is it's a 12-week module. And I think then you can add on 6 extra weeks called ludicrous mode, like getting into ludicrous mode. Insane Productivity is 12 modules designed to increase your productivity. I can't put it any simpler than that. And it's helped me immensely, right? And I've used it. I've gone through it 3 times. I probably have done it 3 or 4 times, but I haven't done it in several years. And I find myself at the end of 2024, one of the busiest seasons. I'm finishing up one of the busiest seasons that I've been in the mortgage space in the last 27 years, because we recently bought out our joint venture partner, VIP Mortgage, and we've taken Zenith. We're calling it Zenith 2.0. It's not official, but Zenith 2.0 is just an independent mortgage bank now, and it's required us to do all kinds of work and implement all kinds of new policies and procedures for our company as an independent mortgage bank. I'll talk about that more in the future. But so I find myself many days being completely overwhelmed at the end of the day. Like, oh my God, I have so much going on. And it was actually the perfect time for me to get back and take a look at what I'm doing. So Insane Productivity I'm going to be going through it again over these next 12 weeks. It's on demand, and it comes with you download the workbook, and you do a lot of work as you're going through the program. The first module they talk about is how our brains work. And it really focuses on the fact that we're all given 24 hours in the day. Everybody has the same 24 hours, regardless of who you are. You wake up every day with a new clock, and there's 24 hours. And the question is, what are you going to get done in your 24-hour period? And I've done this myself. I have to ask myself, how can I get what I'm getting done in 24 hours? And I look at somebody else who is living in a much bigger way, right? And I'm not talking about somebody who has a lot more money, although that's certainly part of it. I'm just talking about somebody who's accomplishing a lot more than I'm accomplishing, doing a lot more business, impacting a lot more people, influencing a lot more people at their companies. And how are they doing that in the same amount of time when I feel like I don't have enough time? And it really just comes down to how they use that time. In the first module, he talks about our 3 brains. We have a robot brain, which is our I don't know if he calls it our subconscious, but our robot brain is just all the things that we do without thinking about them, right? When we drive our car home from work or on the way to the office, we don't have to think about, we know how to drive now. Ideally, you know how to drive, and we can drive our car doing 20 different things, thinking about 20 different things at the same time. But if you think about when you first started driving that car, it was hard, right? Like you had to pay attention to 20 things before you could start the engine. And today we drive our car with steering with our knees and looking at our phones and having a conversation, changing the radio station. So that's our robot brain. And then we have something called our monkey brain. And man, I am like, I'm just shaking my head because my monkey brain takes over all the time. You probably catch it sometimes in this podcast where I'll change subject in the middle of a sentence because I remember something else that I'm talking about. That's the monkey brain. Or just sitting here right now and going like this, like, oh yeah, what's going on my phone, right? For no reason, nothing happened. It didn't buzz, but I just think, my monkey brain's like, hey, what's going on my phone? I have ADD. My wife goes like squirrel, and I'm the one who goes and looks. And then we have something called our sage brain. And our sage brain, for me, my sage brain is the brain that said, hey, Dave, it's probably time for you to go through Insane Productivity again. So that's what the first module is about, the way our brains work and the different things that we do. The second module is where it gets really fun and this goes back to the fact that we all have 24 hours in the day, and it's how those hours are being used that determine how much we get accomplished, right? Our biggest issue isn't that we don't have the desire to do it. My biggest issue is distractions. And that's everybody's biggest issue. It isn't. Everybody thinks it's the technology, and I know because I run down the technology a lot. I hate smartphones. When I say I hate them, I hate what they've done to us. I hate what they've turned us into, where they can be such a distraction in our lives, and we're just not as connected as we used to be, it seems like, and in all of our relationships. And you see people that they're just not present. We're not present anymore. But the technology isn't the issue. I blame the technology, and that's a mistake. The technology isn't the problem. We're the problem. It's our behavior is the cause. It's what we choose to do. A good analogy that he uses in the second module is how everybody blames the food industry for how obese everybody in America is, as if somehow the food industry is shoving the food down people's throat. But that's not what's happening, is it? It's our behavior. It's the people eating the food that isn't good for them. I say this many times. We all know the difference between an apple and a bag of Doritos. And we all know that the apple is better for us than a bag of Doritos. So we have to make a conscious choice to not eat the apple and eat the Doritos instead, to have obesity issues in our lives. It's just that simple. And when you recognize that, it's like you start to recognize that, oh man, it is the way I think, and it's the things that I do. And what's happened to us is that we've gone a little unconscious. And that's what module 2 is about, is I think that we've gone pretty unconscious in how we approach our day. So we're hijacked all the time by all these distractions, and we do it to ourselves. So this phone is, if the phone's in reach, we pick it up. That's where this issue is causing a lot of problems for all of us. So in this second module, what Darren calls this is the digital distractions. And he's talking about our smartphones, but he's talking about more than just the smartphone. He's talking about all the social media apps. He's talking about everything that is available to us on these phones and how they've kind of taken over our lives. And that's really what the issue is, because it comes down to the fact that we all have 24 hours in a day, and how are we using them? He rattles off some statistics that are mind-boggling, like 67% of people or something like that check their email 40 times in an hour. Do you ever do that? Do you ever click the send receive button to see if anybody has sent you an email? Do you ever look at your phone just to see if you've gotten a text or a phone call, even though it didn't go off? Do you sit at a meeting and with your phone on buzz just in case somebody has something they want to tell you? Or just all the ways that we've allowed ourselves to actually go unconscious and not be fully present. And when you're trying to do something as important as business plan and execute on a business plan, your behavior is going to be the difference. Am I wrong? Your behavior that you exhibit throughout the year is going to be the difference between whether or not you achieve the goals that you set yourself, or you don't achieve the goals you set yourself, because it all comes down to what you do every day. It's the choices that we make in the moment that are going to determine the direction that we go in our lives, right? And so if your business plan calls for you to have 60 conversations a week, that means you need to have 10 conversations a day, Monday through Saturday, or 12 conversations a day, Monday through Friday. If that's in your business plan, that you have to have those conversations in order for you to achieve your goals, and on the first day, you only have two of these conversations, and it's because you somehow got busy doing all these other things that aren't about making those phone calls. All that happened is your behavior prevented you from dialing the phone. Your behavior prevented you from having the conversations. All the other things that were a distraction, we allowed into our lives because everybody's the same. So we're acting like somehow somebody who's achieving at a higher level and accomplishing a lot more than we are doesn't have those distractions. And that's not right. They have just as many, if not more, distractions than we are. What they're good at is blocking them out, right? They block out the distractions and they don't let them come in until they get what we need to have done. This is the subject that I'm going to cover over the next few podcasts, because first of all, you need to be sure you're doing your business planning. And as we do these podcasts going forward, we're going to just be talking about the strategies that Darren shares in Insane Productivity. I'm just going to be talking about them. I'm not really teaching them. I'm not going to share any of the information. It's all copyrighted, but I'm going to talk about the value of them and why I think it's so important and how I think it can help you. And maybe that'll inspire you to get your own subscription to Insane Productivity. If you just Google Insane Productivity, you can see. And once you pay for it, I think you can pay for it in 3 installments or something. You don't have to pay it all up front. You have lifetime access to it. So it's not like you use it and lose it. It's like you'll have lifetime access to it. I bought my version of it. It's been a few years since I paid for it. And this is going to be the 3rd or 4th time that I've gone through it. What I want to share at the end of this is just what he does at the end of the 2nd module is he gives you a document that has 47 questions on it. It's called a digital assessment. And it asks you about all the different ways that you could be distracted and whether or not this applies to you. As an example, it'll ask, do you ever pull out your phone? Like, do you take your phone into church with you? And has your phone ever gone off in church? I don't know if it asks if it's gone off, but do you take your phone to church with you? Do you take your phone into the bathroom with you when you go to the bathroom? It asks, do you ever text or email while you're driving your car? It asks you 47 questions like that, and then you're supposed to rate yourself. I'm actually doing pretty good on mine. I'm not like a 16 I had 16 yeses out of 47. But I've taken this assessment before, but some of the 16 things, I want to get better. I want to get it down to below 5 items on that list or 0, because it just means that I would be that much more focused. But one of the things that I do, and I had to answer yes to, is I do sometimes text or email while I'm driving. And it is, first of all, it should be, I think if it's not against the law in Colorado, or maybe it is, I know it's against the law in some states to be looking at your phone while you're driving. It should definitely be against the law, because they've statistically proven that you're more impaired if you're driving and texting and emailing at the same time than you are if you're over the legal limit for alcohol consumption. So it's a very dangerous thing to do, and there's a lot of risk that you could hurt yourself or somebody else. But worse than that is that the amount of loss that you'd experience in every way if you caused an accident that actually hurt or worse, killed somebody. So I'm definitely putting the phone down in the car. I'm not going to use it anymore. There's a bunch of things that you can do. I know there's features that you don't receive text while you're driving. And I know that you can, one of the things he suggests is leave your phone in the trunk or in the back seat so that you can't reach it. I'm going to become as disciplined as I can about just not using it. That's going to be one of the things that I implement. But let's stay focused on the subject at hand. So that digital assessment is a really valuable tool just to give you something to look at. It just talks about all the things that become distracting to us, all the social media channels that we use, all the things that are a part of our lives that now take us out of the moment and become these distractions, which is, as we've established, the difference between what we accomplish and what we'd like to accomplish compared to what everybody else is capable of accomplishing in the same amount of time. So I'm going to keep talking about insane productivity over the next several podcasts. I hope you enjoyed this one. Again, I would highly recommend looking up Darren Hardy's Insane Productivity Program and take a look at it for yourself. Get started on your business planning. If you need any help with business planning, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help you with that. I've done it hundreds of times with many groups over the years. So that's it, everybody. This has been another episode of Make the Call. My name is Dave Gallegos. I'm the president of Zenith Home Loans. And thanks a lot for listening. Do me a favor. If you like the podcast, please rate this on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and share it with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome day.
Thank you for listening to Make the Call with Dave Gallegos, brought to you by Zenith Home Loans. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and share the show with a friend or colleague who would also find value.